Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we've got a review of Creality's K1 3D printer. Now first of all, quick little history lesson about me. I am a newbie to the 3D printing space, so I've been doing it for just over a year now and having a lot of fun. And I have used a total of two 3D printers. One is an Ender from Creality and the other one is a K1 from Creality. So be aware that that is my knowledge base going into this review, and hopefully this perspective coming from a newbie buying these kind of printers is useful to you. So we'll start with the basics of the K1. It is a extremely fast printer. I think that's its main selling point, but it's also quite a more high-end one. So for instance, you don't have to level the bed. You can leave it all mostly to be automatic and not have to do much at all. However, that now moves us into my experience with the K1. So what I'll say is I've had a few issues with it. It's not been a particularly smooth thing. For me, the Ender that I've previously had works perfect. It's slow, but I've never really had any issues with it. For instance, I've never had to take the hot end apart or anything like that. With the K1, I've had to take apart the hot end 3 different times because of different kind of clogs and issues. So much so that I always now take out the filament every time I'm done printing, and then even if I plan to print the next day or something like that, I don't leave filament in the K1, I take it out. And this to me is more of a design flaw with the K1 where it just needs a little bit of tweaking, and I think it would be better. You also need to watch when putting filament into the 3D printer as well, because you get to the point where it'll try feeding and it just kind of clicks. And the way to kind of solve this seems to be that when you're feeding in, hold up the tube a little bit more vertically, and then it seems to go in a lot better, and then you don't have any issues after that. But it's certainly been a lot more pernickety. And when this K1, when I first got it, I thought, oh, it self-levels, it does all this itself. Hopefully it'll be a lot easier overall to use. And I think it's actually been a bit more difficult. Now, what I have been loving though is the other features. So Wi-Fi has been incredible. The user interface is really, really good. I've had no problems with it. It feels a bit more intuitive than the old Ender interface that I'm used to. And it's just been very, very nice to be able to print stuff from my computer, and I can just send it off and tell it to print it straight away, and it's beautiful, just gets it done. It is nice. The other factor is of course the speed. This thing is so fast that it is definitely the big selling point for me, and as such it's overtaken my Ender. I've also had great adhesion with a lot of the prints I've been printing on this. I've been able to do a lot more intricate stuff than I normally would be able to do, and overall I think that this has been a massive upgrade. So going from the Ender to the K1 has just been incredible. So that's been a huge success there. Now, there is a little bit of a downside I would talk about. So you might notice my one here is on the floor, sitting on a massive piece of wood. This is because normally I've got my Ender sitting on just a normal IKEA cabinet and it just sits there and prints fine. If you put the K1 on top, it shakes everything that it's sitting on. So as such, I ended up putting it on a big chunk of wood on the floor, and that way it doesn't shake nearly as bad, which I do think results in better 3D prints if it's not on a piece of furniture that's also kind of swaying with it. I think that's a better setup. And even then, just the fact that you can see the furniture underneath it vibrating as it prints, because it's printing so fast and things are moving so quickly, I think it's definitely better that you actually put this on the floor. So be wary of that. Right now, I've just got it in my bedroom, sitting on a big chunk of wood in a place that used to have stuff sitting there, but of course now no longer, because I need it there for the 3D printer instead. So be wary of that. I think this probably should not be on any kind of furniture, or if it is, something really solid. And thankfully it does come with some nice big rubber feet. They must have obviously known this thing was going to vibrate a lot. So it comes with these massive rubber feet, and they're big thick things. They're really solid, and they do an extremely good job of actually reducing the overall vibration when it's sitting on that big chunk of wood. Now let's talk criticism. So I just want to pass on, if anyone from Creality ends up watching this, what I'd love for Creality to do is have a much, because they've innovated in some places, but they definitely haven't in others. So for me, feeding in the filament and retracting it should be a lot simpler and easier, and it still has a lock-in mechanism at the top of the hot end. I'd love to kind of get to the point where all of that can be automated as well, because this is the one thing I had with this, is just the filament going in and out. I used to have quite a lot of issues until I figured out, oh, you just got to hold this tube up a little bit higher. Then I was able to get a bit better. But I feel like all of that could be improved design-wise by Creality at the start. So hopefully the next generation will start to see better ways of getting the filament in and out without the issues that I had. The also clogging off the hot end was definitely a pain in the ass. I feel like this hot end as well is more annoying to take apart because it's got a lot of little plastic bits on top that are just there to make it look good, but are a pain because you got to take them off. So it'd be nice if those weren't quite so much of a pain in the butt and the whole thing maybe could be brought apart a lot easier with less screws. But that's also where my limited knowledge of 3D printers comes to a problem because I've only used two so far, so there might be other brands out there that just do a way better job at this part of the machine. And I'd also love to hear in the comments below if you have any other recommendations about other 3D printers that would probably fit my kind of skill level and which ones are kind of your best brands and stuff like that that you have personally tried. Now let's move on to conclusions. So I think the big one and the first one I'm going to hit is, would I recommend this to someone else? Because I think overall my score for this printer would be about 8 out of 10, and I don't think I would recommend it to anybody. And that's purely because of the filament feed issues. If that was simpler, I think I'd just say, yeah, this is a great printer. But because of those things, because there just has to be a couple of different kind of knacks to getting it all right, I feel like if I did recommend it, I'd probably have to go to that person's home. I'd have to sit down with them and say, right, this is what you need to do to not have this issue. This is what I did to not have that issue. If I could kind of figure that all out with them, it'd be fine. But if it was just a basic recommendation, I think I'd have to say it's not recommended by me. And it's not for a lack of good features. This thing's fast, it prints really good, the adhesion's brilliant, it levels great. I've had zero kind of issues with the actual prints itself. You do need to go for high speed filament. I would say that. I've got a review about high speed filament if you want to go over it. But other than that, this thing is just incredibly good. It is actually a great 3D printer. It's just those little details that I think hold it back from being a great printer. And because those details make it a pain in the ass to get up to speed to use it properly and not have issues where you have to take the hot end apart, that's what just pushes me to say not recommended to buy the K1. And maybe, you know, version 2 or 3 of this, because I'm assuming this will be like the end, or they're going to have lots of different K1 versions eventually. In a couple of iterations, this might get to the point where it'll be perfect and you can just go ahead and print and get the filament in and out easily without any issues. But yeah, certainly for me, I wouldn't return this printer. It is great and it's fast, and that has been the big change for me. Going from the Ender, which I used to use, of course, all the time, now I use the K1 all of the time with maybe 1% of my prints being done on the Ender, and that to me is pretty sensational. That's a year. Actually, I got this one maybe 6 to 8 months after the Ender. To think how this then superseded the Ender so successfully, even with its issues, is substantial and impressive. But like I say, I can't recommend it because it's a bit of a pain in the ass. But once you get past those pain in the ass points, it can be great. I just wouldn't recommend it unless I can sit down and talk someone through the problems I've had so that they don't encounter them. And hopefully that'll be sorted out with just design upgrades in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.